Hey guys, welcome to this week's track guide. This time we'll be showing you the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park in the BMW GTP car. So starting your lap, or rather finishing your out lap, starting your proper lap, you'll be coming out on the far left hand side of the track, which is more or less where you want to stay at. Yeah, when starting your lap, just make sure you get out of the final corner with good traction, carry good speed, don't overdo it on exit, but just be efficient and well, clean with your exit onto the lap proper. And approaching turn 1, it's a really high speed corner where you basically take it in 5th gear once the tire's up to temperature, which at full speed looks something like this. So as for the braking point for turn 1, I don't really have a set point really, but it's more about, well, if you want to fixate a braking point, it would be between this and this sort of electricity pole. Around about halfway between them, that's where you want to start introducing some turning or some. You want to do some rotation into the corner, start the turning in phase, and as I so often do, I always just blend off the throttle very, very slightly in order to shift some of the weight forwards to prepare the car for the turning in phase, and eventually you want to transition that onto the brakes proper. And but it's only a very slight brake input because you're really stressing the car a lot with the rotation you're inducing, so it can't really take a lot of brake pressure, but just that little bit of grazing on the brakes or that little bit of trail braking will help you get the car rotated and basically place it where you want it to end up. Which, speaking of where you want to end up, it's about yeah, it would be obviously as close as you can get to this curb right here, and try your best to aim for a bit of a late apex. Don't be right on top of the curb right as the corner begins. But as you can see here, this corner or the radius of the corner changes slightly, and it sort of tightens towards the exit. So you want your car to be aligned with the angle of the corner right around this sort of kink. So you want to be pointed towards the exit. Yeah, pretty late on, so which is why you want to aim for a late apex in turn 1. And as for the exit itself, or as for the exit of the corner, there is a bit of curbing to help you out, obviously. But this curb right here, it can be a bit tricky because as you can see, there's a bit of extra tarmac available right beyond or to the left of the red and white curb. But if you dip your wheel even a slight bit beyond that, that's when the car will start bottoming out, and even on cold tires, there's even the danger of losing the car altogether. So do your best to leave a bit of margin on exit, and at most put your car with your left-hand side wheels onto this sort of tarmac strip on the exit here. And right after that, right after negotiating turn 1, you want to bring the car back over towards the right for turn 2, which is a very quick or even quicker high-speed left-hander, which is also pointing downhill. It's a lot of fun, but it's also a bit tricky to get right. At full speed, looks something like this. So as you've negotiated turn 1, as I've pointed out, you want to bring the car back over towards the right and realign it with the right-hand side as much as you can in order to be able to point the car towards turn 2, which is to the left. You don't really want to be having you don't really want the car having still or it's still being pointed towards the right when starting your turning for turn 2. So as for the braking point itself, same trick as turn 1. You want to blend off the throttle slightly before whilst introducing the corner itself, and your reference point for that would be this sort of electricity pole right here. Like right as it starts going out of view, or right as it starts shifting from your actual vision to your peripheral vision, that's when you start your turning in, blending off the throttle slightly, and as soon as the apex comes into view, same as turn 1, you want to carry just the tiniest amount of braking input into the corner, and also be mindful that right as this sort of little bit of tarmac opens up on the inside, like right as the grass makes this sort of little dip right here, that's where the road has quite a big bump in it. So you don't really want to be right here with your left hand side. So there's a bit of extra space available potentially here, but be mindful that this inside part here is really bumpy. So this will more often than not just make the front of your car go light, and which will take away some of the rotation of the car. So you want to get as close to it as possible, but not really go on top of this sort of bump on the inside. And as for when you want to get back onto the throttle, obviously this whole part is downhill, and this part initially is slightly off camber, but as soon as the track starts going into this sort of darker shade where the rubber's at, that's when the grip is becomes more readily available. But it's really only readily available on the inside part right here. Like this left half of the circuit, or this left half of the track is really grippy. So that's, if you can get your car placed here, you can be really aggressive on throttle. But in order to be able to achieve that, you want to be that little bit more patient when going back onto the throttle. Like, it is pretty inviting to already be trying to force the issue on throttle right around here, but yeah, right around here would be the point where you start thinking about introducing some throttle again and trying to keep the car on the inside as long as possible, because A, it saves distance, and B, also there's a lot more grip where you will be able to carry the amount of speed you want to carry without necessarily overloading the front tires. So eventually you want to start drifting out towards the right, and pretty similar to turn 1, there's a bit of curbing available on the right, but in this instance you don't really want to be having to use it, basically because you're pretty much straight away into the preparation phase for turn 3, which is why you want to swing it back over towards the left in order to open up the entry for turn 3. But this whole section exiting turn 2, going into turn 3 at full speed looks like this. So exiting turn 2, as I've said, you want to swing it back over towards the left as soon as possible, and yeah, there's a bit of a difference between the transition between turns 1 and 2 and turns 2 and 3. Turn 1 and 2, you have quite a bit of time to realign the car with the far, or with the outside edge of the track. In this instance, you're still basically at this point, you're still pointed like, yeah, you're not really pointed towards the corner, so you have to take that into account when choosing your braking point, which is why for turn 3 you want to brake quite early, keep the car loaded as long as possible, and as for the braking point itself, like as soon as this advertising board that's facing away from you goes out of view, that's when you start transitioning onto the brakes. And in this instance, since you're still trying to maneuver the car and manipulating the trajectory in which you want to go in, or you're still manipulating the direction you're choosing to take whilst on the brakes, you want to leave a bit of margin on the brakes. So in this instance, it's more viable to not try and overdo it on the entry already, because as I've said, you're still turning the car while braking, while turning, and if you combine it with too late of a braking point, that's when things start going wrong. So all this time, when approaching turn 3, you want to aim for to be on the inside of the track, right as the curb on the right hand side ends, because the whole radius of the corner, once again, pretty similar to turn 1, it tightens towards the end of the corner itself. So you want to aim for a bit of a late apex, and all this time you're trying to keep the car loaded on the left hand side. Like, you want to keep the front and the rear axle loaded equally, or as equally as possible, because you don't really want to carry any understeer or oversteer through the corner, because yeah, it's all about, this corner is more about getting the car slowed down early and carrying the speed through it, like distributing the speeds through the corner through all 3 parts equally. Like, you cannot really gain time on entry, and you cannot really gain time through the middle and exit if you've already overdone it on the entry. So the entry here is all the more important to be a bit more conservative. And as far as the exit goes, you can be, if you've not overdone the entry, as I've pointed out, you can be quite aggressive on throttle. Like, you'll see me be pretty close to 100%, and we're still only about 2/3 of the way through the corner, which is why I want to brake early, so you can basically do this. And pretty soon thereafter you start going back towards 100% throttle. And as for the exit, once again there's a bit of curbing on the left hand side to help you out, but if you can help it, try and try not depending on having to use it, because once you have to use it, that means probably you've induced a bit too much understeer and run out too wide in this instance. But yeah, you want to bring the car back over towards the right, because there's quite a fun section going up, which at full speed looks something like this. So this is quite a technical braking zone, because adding to the difficulty is that the grip has been massively reduced on the GTP. This section you were able to pretty much stay on the left hand side, exiting turn 3, and just save a lot of distance. Ever since they've reduced, or ever since the grip on the GTP has been reduced, you have to use this sort of entry part going underneath the advertising bridge right here. You have to take quite a bit of a swing going into turn 4, the left-hander that's pointing downhill at this point. You have to take quite a bit of a swing towards the right and bring it back over towards the inside pretty late on, because turn 4 sort of tightens towards the end of it. Like, this radius is pretty consistent, and right around this point the corner tightens. So you want to leave a bit of margin to the left-hand side in order to be able to align the car with the left-hand side while braking. So yeah, that's why you want to not be on the far left-hand edge. You're looking to be on the right-hand side and bring it, swinging it back over towards the left. And approaching turns 5 and 6. I think it's turns 5 and 6. Yes, it is. Once if you've done it correctly, you can leave your braking quite a late point, because the whole taking a swing through turn 4 in order to be able to prepare turn 5 and the braking zone for turn 5 is that you want to have the car in as straight a line as possible before jumping onto the brakes. Which in this instance would be right around as the curb ends. That's when you start thinking about transitioning from throttle to brake, and yeah, pretty soon thereafter I start going onto the brakes. And my target here is to have the car pointed as straight as possible in order to be able to be as aggressive as possible on the brakes, because the less steering input you have to induce, the more aggressive you can be on the brakes. And adding to this, we're going downhill right now, but at this point we're starting to go into quite a big compression, which allows you to be all the more aggressive on the brakes. But pretty soon after the compression starts, you want to start to ease off the brakes once again, because you're turning into turn 5 itself. And all this time you're still slowing down the car with the tiniest amount of brake input. And yeah, be mindful here that this sort of first apex of the two has quite a bit of potential of causing a rear lock, which which will potentially cause a snap while under braking, which will throw the rear end loose, and you will carry a slide all the way through the corner, if not spin out altogether. So be mindful that going through this first apex, you want to slow down the car as much as possible whilst traveling straight, and only really have to drag the brakes ever so slightly in order to keep slowing down the car for the second apex, which is coming up now. And yeah, as for the line, you can take quite a bit of a swing towards the left, but be mindful that the grip will eventually run out. And yeah, the further you go towards the left, the harder it is to bring it back towards the right. So right around half a car width away from the left-hand side curb would be ideal, I think, to still have a decent angle going into the corner, but also choosing a line that sort of saves distance while under braking for turn 6, or turns 5 and 6 rather. And yeah, the second apex of the two starts coming into view pretty soon thereafter. And the target here is to have the car slowed down to a point where you can go onto the throttle safely again without having sort of imbalance in the car still. And yeah, at this point you're sort of feeding the throttle back in order to yeah, you're sort of feeling out how much throttle the car can take at this point, and try your best to, yeah, you can take it in second, I'm sure. I like to take the corner in first because that gives me a bit more authority over the torque I have available, or over the throttle input I have available on exit. So yeah, obviously try and make the most use of the track available, but be mindful that when exiting turn 6, this curb on the left, it's only really safe to touch it once you're traveling straight and once you're into third gear, because if you go onto the curb too early and the car is still under load, under heavy load, and not really and having not yet built up a lot of downforce, the curb can throw you into a bit of a wiggle on exit, which will just cost you momentum and time all the way on the straight up here, which I'm just going to talk over at this point. Yeah, this straight line, or this straight after turn 6, is pretty much self-explanatory. Obviously, try and negotiate most of the traffic on the straight if you can. And you're approaching all this time. You have a lot of time to bring the car back over towards the left-hand side for the final set of 3 corners before going back over towards the start-finish straight. I think it's turns 7, 8, and 9 at this point. Yeah, which at full speed looks something like this. So after negotiating the straight with a few kinks in it, the final kink is towards the right, which sort of invites you to ever so slightly ease the car back over towards the left. You have a lot of time to align the corner with, or align the car with the white line on the left. And as for the braking zone for turn 7, so pretty similar to all the medium to high speed corners we've negotiated thus far. I think it's pretty viable to sort of start easing off the throttle ever so slightly to shift some of the weight forward before you start committing onto the brakes proper. So as far as your braking goes, this second to last electricity pole, as soon as it starts going out of view, that's when you start turning into the corner, easing off the throttle, and start easing onto the brakes ever so slightly. Because the smoother you can do this transition, the more the more you can get out of the tires. Because if you shift the weight forwards too suddenly, or if you turn in too suddenly, the tire will eventually, or it will become overloaded pretty quickly. So try your best to get this transition introduced as smoothly as possible. And yeah, you carry the tiniest amount of brake input once again, like at maximum 25 to 30%, all the way through this first. Like turn 7 is sort of a double apex sort of corner at this point that I'm just realizing. Like this first curb, you're still carrying some sort of brake input, or like the slightest amount of brake input, and the second one, it sort of invites you to ever so briefly go back go back towards the throttle, and try and realign the car with the right hand side as much as possible before turning into turn 8, and your reference point when braking for turn 8 would be the end of this curb on the right hand side. Like right as you pass it, or pretty soon thereafter, you can start committing onto the brakes once again. And turn 8, you want to, at this turn 8, it's pretty important to have sort of a late apex, because as you can see, the corner or turn 8 has quite a consistent radius all the way through, up right up until the exit or the very end of the corner. Like the radius changes pretty sharply right here, so you want to aim for a late apex in order to have the car aligned as good as possible with the left hand side in order to open up the final corner, turn 9. And yeah, once again, you commit or you have a pretty brief throttle input once again before going onto the brakes once again, and this time your braking point would be right as you start hitting this sort of darker shade of asphalt when looking onto the track, or as soon as this sort of advertising strip starts going out of you. That's when you commit onto the brakes once again for the final corner. Once again, you carry very small amounts of brake input into the corner because you're turning the car at the same time. And since you've negotiated a lot of high-speed direction change, and you've braked a lot, gone back on throttle a lot, and the tires are pretty stressed at this point, so be mindful of that when negotiating the final corner and going back onto the throttle. And yeah, try your best to avoid any sort of oversteer here, because as I pointed out, the car will be pretty stressed out at this point. The rears will be pretty hot as well, so the rear grip will not be as ideal as it can be. Try your best to limit the oversteer. Like, you'll see me fight the car here as well. So yeah, it will happen more often than not that you have to carry some oversteer through the final corner. And as far as the exit goes, there's a bit of curb available and a bit of tarmac on the beyond the curb itself. But in this instance, it's pretty smooth. I guess, as opposed to the exit of turn one, so you can make full use of the tarmac strip on the left hand side. Just be mindful that the tarmac strip runs out before the red and white curb runs out, and you want to have the car fully back onto the asphalt before the red and white curb runs out. And yeah, get your upshifts right and be prepared for a pretty immediate turn into turn one pretty soon after the start finish line once again. And yeah, that is one lap of the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. So that was one lap of the Canadian Tire Motorsports Park in the BMW GTP car. I hope I could help you with some tidbits here and there. And yeah, have a good week of racing in IMSA, and I'll see you guys next week.